I'm Blair Dorosh-Walther, the director of Out in the Night.
And I'm Giovanna Chesler, one of the producers of Out in the Night.
Out in the Night is about a group of African-American lesbians who were attacked in the West Village of New York City in 2006. They defended themselves and were consequently charged and convicted with varying degrees of assault, gang assault, and attempted murder. They ended up receiving 3.5 to 11 years in prison, and the media called them a wolf pack and a gang of killer lesbians. So the film is really looking at why they weren't looked at as victims or survivors, and why they were immediately criminalized. The role that I ended up, playing as a documentary filmmaker became an organic development with the women. When I'll tell you how I first got involved in the case. I heard about it a couple days after the fight happened and got involved as an activist for the first 1.5 to 2 years. And then in 2008, when their appeals were approaching, still really felt very passionate and outraged by the story. And the media attention had died down at that point. So I approached the women to see if they were interested in doing a documentary, and to see if they were interested in having me do the documentary. Met with each of them, their family members, and their attorneys, and we started kind of this slow process of getting to know each other and figuring out if we were going to be a good fit and if it made sense, and kind of what it was going to be about. So I'm not personally interested in fly-in-the-wall stories for me to tell, not that I'm not interested to watch them, but that's not how I approached this. I was very interested in creating context for why they might have felt as threatened as they felt that night, and why they might have felt like they had to respond in the way they responded. So when we look at in the courtroom, they don't allow time and space for the context of a self-defense justification. So the women weren't able to talk about their past histories of sexual trauma. They weren't able to talk about their histories with police brutality. You have this white, straight, high-powered male judge who couldn't in any way put himself in the shoes of the women, who are Black lesbians from Newark, New Jersey. So because you can't have this context in the courtroom, and because the media completely did a disservice and didn't at all look at the women or paint them as complete human beings, the film was about creating that context and really diving into why they might have felt as threatened as they did. So
right now, Out in the Night is playing at least in 30 cities in the next 2 months. We're in 8 cities this week, and it's been unbelievable. We released the film in June in its theatrical form at LA Film Festival, and since then have been programmed in nearly every LGBT film festival in the US, and some international film festivals. The film is supported by ITVS and Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and as such, they're considering it for PBS broadcast for next year, and we should know about that very soon. We're starting to screen at universities as well, and the women usually come to the film festivals whenever we can afford it, or the film festival supports their travel. And finally, the other piece of our distribution right now is the United Nations. United Nations has a program called Free and Equal to address homophobia worldwide and transphobia, and decriminalize homosexuality worldwide. And so they've selected Out in the Night to launch that film program, which is what we did at the LA Film Festival. And now the film will be available to 77 sites worldwide, where people at different United Nations can organize a screening and use the film to hopefully address the issues that a lot of people are facing internationally, finding safe space for queer people on the street, finding safe space in the legal system for people who are challenged economically to defend themselves. And the film also shows to an international audience that the US doesn't have it right. There's a lot to do in the United States that goes way beyond gay marriage. And I think that as we've been at more and more screenings, we find audiences who are relieved to hear this kind of story being told that does move a LGBT agenda, hopefully beyond gay marriage, and starts to acknowledge the people in our community who are incarcerated and the people in our community who have had to defend themselves and the people who have less privilege because they're not white. And that's the conversation we've been having. So at Seattle this week, there was a panel discussion with community leaders after the screening, and that should be happening at every screening because we need to move the conversation beyond this is what happened in the West Village that night to this is what can happen and has happened in your cities. If you're C.C. McDonald, for instance, in Minnesota, we know that this story, unfortunately, does repeat itself.
So the LGBT film festivals are vitally important to the LGBT community because it's a part of what gets our stories out there. And I think specifically when we're able to travel with the women in the film, when people see the film and then they're able to engage actually with the women and ask them questions, but also for the women to actually visualize the support that they either didn't have throughout the last 8 years of their incarceration, or they had but weren't able to see it because they were incarcerated. So I think that kind of connection is so important, and we've been in screenings where people have very similar stories to the women in the film, and it's so important that they see that on screen. And then we've been in screenings where people hadn't heard of the story and have never lived that experience or heard of something like that, and we're just connected to the women in this way that just felt so powerful. Please check us out on outinthenight.com. We are raising funds for the women to get to more festivals and college campuses. We are also raising funds for our outreach and engagement strategy that we're going to announce in the following months. You can follow us on Twitter at Out in the Night, on Facebook at Out in the Night. Each of the women are also on Facebook and Twitter, and would love to hear your comments if you wanted to hit them up directly.
We're also selling these gorgeous posters of the film, and you'll see them on the page, on our Out in the Night page under purchase. And those posters, all of those proceeds go directly to the same things Blair was talking about, getting the women to film festivals and supporting our outreach campaign, because we are really interested and we know that the film is an educational tool, it's a conversation starter, it's a motivator, it makes people furious. And that's what we're going to be doing with it, is like the then what, and we're creating that plan right now.
Yeah, so if you want to write about it, or if you work at a college or university, please hit us up.
Thanks.
Thank you.